and what you are expecting your child to kind of grow up with, whether that is what is being offered in the school. Okay. Now, there will be no school which doesn't have some drawbacks of what different people will call the same thing as drawback, somebody will call that as symptom. Okay. What you see as a drawback, you have to accept.
Good morning and welcome to the fourth episode of Out of the Box Season 2. If this is the first time you're tuning into an Out of the Box session, a very, very special welcome to you. And if you've been to the other episodes, then welcome back. In the last three episodes, we spoke about a few critical aspects when it comes to identifying the right school for your child. The whole series is designed to help you find the right school. This is the time of the year, the season of the year, when parents look for changes in schools or looking for if the current school is a good fit for their children. In the first episode, we spoke about how do you find, or rather, how do you understand your teenager? All right. So we had Usha Aka speaking to us in length about the various things that you need to keep in mind while understanding the psychology of your teenager. Second, we spoke about the red flags you need to look for to find out if the current school is ideal for your child. So we had Dr. Kannan speaking to us from Australia, talking about the various challenges that children today face in schools. The third episode, we went one step further. We found how can you really bridge a gap between a school and high school. Today, we find a lot of children struggling in college or taking up courses which has no value for them. And then only to realize to come back the whole circle. So we spoke to three children or three young learners, as we should say, who took a gap year and then found their purpose in life. And today we will be speaking about one aspect which is not really spoken about or which is not really thought about by parents. If you are a working professional, I'm sure you've heard this phrase, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Cliched as it may sound, I'm sure you've heard this phrase a zillion times in your office, and I'm also sure you will agree that culture of an organization determines the success. It is not the vision, it's not the products, but it's the culture. It's how you hire employees, right? How you foster a culture where you allow your teams to thrive and not just survive. Unfortunately, when parents look for schools, they look for only three things: A, curriculum; two, infrastructure; and three, the student-teacher ratio, ignoring the most critical aspect about finding the right school, which is the organizational culture of the school. A place where your child will spend a significant portion of his day or life should be in sync with what you really expect from a school, from a culture perspective. So in this episode, we will be focusing on this aspect, organizational culture and preparedness for future. And to speak about this session today, we have a very, very special guest, and we have a usual host. And in session, we will cover four perspectives. A, the organization culture of a school. Two, how is it ready, or how can it be prepared to face the post-pandemic world? And three, teaching and four, curriculum. All right. So without much delay, let me invite our host for the day, Naveen Mahesh. Well, Naveen comes on screen. I will request you to go and follow us on our social media pages, and also share this session as a watch party on Facebook so that your friends can also benefit from this. Welcome, Naveen, and over to you.
Thank you, Vimal. Thank you. Good morning. And welcome to one and all to these out of the box sessions. As Vimal said, it's a series of episodes where we try to touch upon very many things, and all of which are in an effort to help young families and even young learners that are either in high school or in just entering college understand the changing world around us. So we're delighted to have in this out of the box session my very dear friend and mentor, Dr. Jayavelu, with us today. Dr. Velu is a multifaceted academician and consultant with specialization on organization design, creativity, change management, and leadership. I've worked with him for over a decade. He has enabled Raji and me understand how to identify our own organizational culture and build on it along with our team. All of us, often keep asking each other, when will we have Dr. Velu's next session at school? So we're always looking forward to building on our culture. Dr. Velu started his career as a mechanical engineer with a BE from the College of Engineering in Guindy, and then went on to do his PhD from IIM Ahmedabad. He has worked as a full-time faculty member at IIM Kozhikode and has taught across many IIMs and top business schools in India, such as, again, IIM Ahmedabad and IIM Indore, IIM Amritsar, etc. He's also trained many small group, he's done many small group facilitations in Sumeda's Academy of Human Context. He's also a certified coach in the EUM and TAM models. I could go on. He's just done so many wonderful things. He works with executives and startup founders as a mentor and a coach. His workshops on leadership using theater and creativity are well received in business schools and industry. Having been a participant in one of those theater and creativity sessions on leadership, I can vouch for his ability to help us understand organizational culture. His workshop course, Discovering Self, is one of the most sought after courses in PGP by PGP students in IIM Kozhikode. He's currently the Dean of VIT AP School of Business, VIT AP University, Vijayawada, where he has set up a B school offering BBA with Liberal Arts Foundation, first of its kind in India. So today's topic is organizational culture and preparedness for the future. I'd like to invite and thank Dr. Jayavelu now. I hope, let's have him on the screen. Welcome, Dr. Velu. It's so wonderful that you could be with us as a speaker in today's session. I'd like to invite you to share your thoughts on today's topic and then delve into, the two aspects in detail together, preparedness for the future and organizational culture. Thank you once again for joining us. Over to you, Dr. Velu.
Is the need of the hour, and I'm happy that you have taken this initiative and to showcase possibilities in the education field, and I'm happy to be here. And to start off with, let me introduce this idea of organizational culture. Organization theories and management practitioners borrowed this term, organizational culture, from anthropologists and sociologists, and it has become a common word. It's become so common. It's seen as pervasive. And if you have to just look at it in terms of what happens, and if you're talking to a management audience, you don't have to introduce this idea like what Vimal was saying. But when you're talking about it from a school perspective, we have to say that organizational culture or institutional or school culture is a very, very, very important aspect of a school, because it shapes the behavior, it shapes the attitudes, and also the mental models that students, teachers, and administrators hold, and as a corollary, also the mental models, attitudes, and behaviors of the parents.
Yeah.
Now, let me just introduce, a simple way or a model of looking at culture. When we talk about culture, it is very similar to what we talk about when we say, Indian culture or Japanese culture or American culture and so on. In the same way, we also talk about IAM culture or NID culture or JNU culture and so on. So as an extension, we also have the culture existing in schools, whether we recognize and work with it or oblivious to its existence, but it does exist there. And when we talk about school culture, it can operate at three different levels. And the most fundamental levels is in terms of the shared assumptions and the perceptions and beliefs that members of the school have, including students, teachers, and the administrators that they hold, and assumptions that they hold about human beings, about relationships, about environment, about work, about performance or success, and also about diversity. And this is something which is very difficult to make assessment even by experts, but it is possible for us to kind of infer what we call as shared values. What are the shared values, beliefs of the school? And one thing that all of us, any member of a school or an outsider, can make a judgment or an assessment about the school is through the artifacts. So what the school celebrates, the heroes in the school, the rituals and ceremonies, the language, the way they use the space and decor and so on. These artifacts kind of help us draw inference about the shared values and the shared assumptions. So, having said that, I would like also to kind of caution us here. Culture is not something which is static and monolithic. It is not. It doesn't remain, static like an idol. It's more like a river. It's dynamic and continuously evolving and changing. And there may be a dominant culture, but we also have to be conscious that there may be a few alternative subcultures that are waiting to sprout and blossom in any institution. With that
Absolutely. Yeah.
context setting, let's go to the questions.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. We internally, we keep telling each other a problem doesn't stay solved in a dynamic environment, and I think culture can sort of always be that guiding light in how do we approach problem solving itself, and your points about the assumptions that we hold about each other and our work, our environment are all so important about the diversity and how we represent ourselves. I want to move from the. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Dr. Velu. I want to, this series is about helping families understand organizational culture and how to find the right schools for their children. So I want to sort of dive into how do families gauge if a particular culture will suit their children. I'd like you to touch on that topic as well.
Yeah, one thing that we have to understand is there is no single best culture for a school. Okay, there could be any number of cultures that exist out there, and any number of schools espousing different cultures which are unique in their own way. And what we have to look at is whether my child will fit into this culture, and whether the values that are kind of exposed by this school's culture is what I want my child to kind of pick up and integrate. And also, we have to look at whether we as a family are ready to be with the child. Okay, so it is when you the there is a saying, it takes a village to nurture a child,
Yes.
and in this modern context it takes a school and the family to nurture a child. And it's not just the school's job, so you also have to see whether you are ready to kind of work with the child, be with the school, and evolve your maybe family values that you've traditionally been brought up with, and kind of expose something new and unique, and prepare your child and you and your family for the future.
Absolutely. I again totally agree with you. I've often found that a difficult thing to explain to families also. Sometimes when young parents come and ask, will a particular school be more suited to preparing my child for a particular exam at a certain grade level? I often used to find before, I took so much of mentoring help from you and started getting into the education world early on. I used to struggle with those challenges. How do I help families understand? And it took me time to really help myself understand, and then families understand that the same point, right? That there is a particular school for every child, and it's not like there's a one size fits all, that everybody will not fit into every school. And it's important that families try and understand this culture that will suit their child and how they play roles in it. I think you touched upon that point. I want to expand on that point, where how do families build on it? So I'd like you to expand that to not just what families can do, how can the learners themselves also be brand ambassadors of the school.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's start with how can a parent assess the school's culture. So if you are visiting the school, first you just take in the ambience, how the space is organized, and then see how the space is integrated, how different aspects of space, the space for interaction, space for learning, space for rest, space for excretion, and how all of this flow together. And Naveen is smiling, but in Vastu, excretion is a very important aspect of design. So look at how these are organized, and when you look at the space, it will give you an idea about to what extent there is integration of various aspects of life, to what extent there is rigid boundaries, and to what extent do we celebrate some aspects of life and hold some as dirty and so on. So the way you this is the space is organized will tell you that. And also to what extent there is a hierarchy between students and children, students and teachers,
And
and maybe students and parents and the administrators. So the way the space is organized will give you a clue to how fragmented, how integrated the school is with various aspects of life, and how rigid the boundaries are across hierarchies, which may be required or which may not be required also. And also look at the designations that you see, how teachers are called, what kind of designations do they have. Do they have many designations, or do they have few designations, and whether the designations are based on the role and the contribution, or whether it's a rigid like a old traditional organization, saying head teacher and assistant teacher and so on. So that also will tell you whether the focus is on the hierarchy and the systems, or whether the focus is on the learning and the most important stakeholder, the students.
yeah,
Also, pay attention to the language. What kind of a language do they use? Are there is a language differentiating? For example, hierarchies and differences, or is the language neutral? And many of us, and this is true for all of us, we don't understand how our language can kind of exclude people or include people, and it can be facilitative or it can be hindering. And by paying attention to the language, the way people speak, you will also get a sense of the culture. You can also look at the symbols, the way the people dress, whether the students use uniforms, so that how the teachers dress and how the other employees dress, and whether they are allowed to freely use other symbols which kind of express their individual identity, or whether there is a forced kind of fitting. Everybody has to fit
right.
into a certain kind of a thing and so on. So let me just talk about one experience of mine, which will
Yes,
kind of highlight. So this is one school. I won't name the school, and so this I was doing a program, and then it was during lunchtime, and then we just had lunch, and we were going out to wash our hands, and then one young child came running to one of the teachers and said, "Teacher, I didn't understand. I don't remember the exact term, teacher or miss." But then she was saying that, okay, I didn't understand. This was the lunchtime, and the teacher, she had a dabba in her hand, and her hand was not yet washed, but she didn't say that, okay, you wait, I'll come. She first stood there and listened. And then first she listened, and then she said, okay, I am going to wash my hand, I'll come and sit with you. And then she went, washed her hand, and then she came and sat with the child, and whatever doubt she had, she, in one corner there in the playground itself, she sat and explained, and then she came for the training program. Now the way, for example, it's quite common, even we do that, right? If you're doing something, we'll say, okay, okay, wait, I'll come. But the difference in this school was the teacher, even though she had a dabba, dirty dabba, and a hand which was getting dried, she
Yeah,
stood there and listened to the child. Okay,
yeah.
that incident kind of highlighted the importance given to child and the way teachers interact and engage with the child. Okay, so in the same way, if you pay attention to what's happening when you visit, you will get a lot of indicators about the culture and what kind of values that the stakeholders in the school have. And of course, little bit in extrapolation about, like I was talking about, assumption about human beings, uh, performance, relationships, etc. Because this incident clearly indicates, the human being is the most important person everywhere. The learning is the most important thing in the school, and our relationships is something which we should never compromise. Okay, even when it is a small issue.
In fact, I couldn't have put it better. I used to, for a long time, also try to articulate this point to a lot of people. Everybody would come and say something about this place is different, or what is that difference. And I think unknowing, I mean, obviously with a lot of help from you and others who have mentored us over the years, we sort of didn't know to call it by this one word called culture, but we were building on something that is culture. And how each of us transacts with children, like you pointed out through that wonderful example, how not to allow force everybody to follow a procedure to even approach talking to a teacher. I think these are all the small little cues. In fact, in the past few years, whenever somebody comes and asks, what's the strength of your organization, I tend to answer by the same word. I say culture. And they say, no, I mean, how many students study here? And I say, oh, so you don't want to know the strength of the organization. You just want to know how many people are studying here. I think strength for us has always been culture. I want to just complete that point, Dr. Velu. How do learners carry themselves as this brand ambassadors of that institution? I want you to touch upon that. I mean, you talked a lot about how to recognize and identify what is a particular culture of an organization, and then gauge whether that sort of gives cues into whether it fits each family's own mindsets and philosophies and all of that. But how do learners themselves be brand ambassadors for the school? You work in the college space, so maybe you can touch upon that a little bit.
Yeah. Before going into how the students are brand ambassadors, let me just answer the point that you raised. The parents come and ask about the strengths of the school and so on. One of the things that parents would look at, which will be that they'll be bombarded with in terms of information, is the what is so-called performance of the students. So that's information which you as parents, you don't even have to ask for. You'll be bombarded with, our students have, so many students have passed. This is the pass percentage. This is the mark percentage that our students have got, and this is the ranks that they got in district schools, and this is the number of students who have got admitted in the top institutions. Whatever, different
right.
whether it is medical colleges or IITs, the JEE mains or NEET and so on. So this is the kind of information that most schools will highlight. Now this is the nature, because this is the larger dominant expectations in the society. You might see that, and what you will have to see is, along with that, do you see the school talking about success in various aspects? Now, if the school is only talking about success in academically, then it tells you that, okay, this is a very academically focused school, and whether is that what you are looking for. Now, like I said earlier, the larger society and the expectations is focused on performance and academic success. Okay, maybe that's what you want for your child, and that's what is your family values. And okay, fine, good. Now, if you're looking for, how to prepare my child for the future, and how can we as a family with the child grow and be ready to face the future, you have to look beyond academic performance, and you have to see what are the other things that the school is talking about or highlighting other than academic excellence. And whether it and one question that you can ask the school, or whether you can see, is there a distinction between academic learning and life skills and other skills that the children learn or have to learn to become contributing citizens? Now, if you see that there is a clear demarcation of that, okay, this is the curriculum, these are the subjects, and they have to study and do well. And there are, of course, extracurriculars, okay, where they learn working in teams, and they do art, they do sport, they do this and that. Okay, that is one perspective. Okay, the other perspective is, you might see some schools talking about curriculum is there, but then the way we teach the curriculum is also taking into account the various skills that the child has to learn, not just the subject matter, but also the life skills of critical thinking, problem solving, understanding the reality of the outside world. So if these aspects of hands-on reality testing kind of activities are integrated into the curriculum, then you can say that, okay, this is more in tune with what's happening outside the world. And one more aspect to with this is, you have to see whether the school is kind of creating a cocoon and a protective space for the child. And most schools do that, and most families also do that. We protect our child, saying, okay, let them be happy and let them not care about what's happening in the family or in the outside world and so on. Okay, that's good to up to a certain age. But then once a child becomes a teenager, the child has to understand the reality, okay, the pulls and pushes of the family and the demands of the external world, and a school which kind of integrates that in the curriculum, which kind of helps them, okay, face understand the reality outside. And remember, we are not throwing the school doesn't throw the child into the world, say, okay, you face the reality. This is a filtered and a safe space for children to understand the reality of the world and prepare themselves to face the world as adults, as contributing citizens. Okay, so this also you can check by simply talking to the teachers and the managers, sorry, administrators.
Yeah,
Now
sure.
about the students as ambassadors. Now, the students are, the alumni are the kind of, I won't say they are output of the students, output of the schools, but they are co-creators. Students and families are not consumers of the school's culture and its products. Okay, children and parents are co-creators of a school's culture, and to that extent they play a strong role. Now the metaphor that comes to my mind is that of a river. Now there is a topography of a river, which exists and which may change with time, and also you have the water that flows through the river. Sometimes the water gets shaped, and it changes and morphs and evolves, flowing in the river. And sometimes the water that's flowing kind of changes the river and its structure and topography itself.
Absolutely.
Okay, in the same way the children get shaped by the school and shape the school,
Shift the
and
school.
their life is the example. Their life is the outcome of the school's culture. It's not their academic achievement, it's not their other achievement. Their life
Absolutely.
and the way they live
Sort of
is the
like
outcome of the
the
school's culture.
Yeah, sort of like the Choluteca bridge that often is brought up in these moments where the photograph shows the bridge and in one place and the
Yeah.
river going somewhere else altogether. And what purpose is the bridge
Yes.
serving if the river is not beneath it
Yes.
anymore? Right? I think you touched on a very important set of points. That we are co-creators. The students are. It's not like one leads to the other. I think it's a co-created journey for both the learner and for the institution. There's a question in the audience, Velu. I'm going to just,
Yes.
let's try and answer that question. The question says, what if we see many things right about a particular school, but there are a few things that don't seem right. How do we go with that? Especially when the school is supposed to be a popular school and in high demand, how do we make that decision for our children? Is the question.
Yeah.
Would you like to take a shot
Okay.
at it?
Yeah, and I'm very happy this was brought in. Uh,
Okay.
just like anything in nature, there'll always be the so-called positives and so-called negatives. These are judgments that we pass based on certain values and references of right and wrong. Now, the way schools and cultures operate, there'll always be something positive, and there may be things which you are not comfortable with the way they do. As parents, you have to focus on whether the values of the school is what is fitting your expectations, that it fits your family values. Now, like I said, we might have been brought up in a very conservative traditional way, and as professionals you might be kind of evolving as a family, as individuals. Now if that is the case, you also have to see the way your family is trajectory is, and the what you are expecting your child to kind of grow up with, whether that is what is being offered in the school. Okay, now there will be no school which doesn't have some drawbacks of what different people will call the same thing as drawbacks, somebody will call that as a strength. Okay, what you see as a drawback, you have to see whether that is critical, so critical that it will affect your family values or the values that the child will kind of internalize. That's what you have to look at. The child first is the fit between the child and the school culture, and the child also will have to evolve. If based on the way you have brought up the child also have to evolve in the school with maybe different or add in terms of the values, new values, and so on. And you have to see whether you will be comfortable with that kind of values that the child will integrate. Now, one of the things which you have to be worried about is if you have a very strong views about life and what success is and what relationships are, what uh, what work is, what performance is, and you have very rigid values, and then if you are looking at a school which doesn't match your views and opinion, then you'll be putting a child you'll be kind of putting a child in a situation where the child will be pulled apart by the family values and the school values. Okay, so you'll
Yeah.
have to see whether you are open to the school's values, whether the child will be comfortable. Okay, some children
Yeah.
look for a lot more direction, and some children need lot more freedom and autonomy, and some children need complex challenges, complex and and some children need challenges which they themselves pick up. So there are many things which the child need and would have some idea of what works for them, and you have to take
Yeah.
that into consideration. You add to that in terms of what you expect the child to imbibe in terms of values, and also your own readiness to work with the school's culture.
Absolutely. I have also one story to share in in that line of thought. Many years ago, somebody came, a parent from Bombay came and said, again, like you did, I don't want to name the school. He said, my child's studying in a particular school in Bombay, and I would like him to start studying with you all. And I said, is your child happy in that school? He said, oh, he's ecstatic. And then I said, what about your wife? She said, oh, I'm all the time contributing time and effort towards that school. Then I said, what brings you here? He said, no, there's a job here that I'm thinking of taking. So I honestly, at the time, I mean, I keep laughing back at that experience. I said, I don't know if it's my place to tell you this, but you already seem to be having so much joy and happiness and fitment for your child and your family. I don't know if you're walking away from something good.
Yes.
Because who knows
Yes.
whether a new organization may give you the same level of happiness. So I don't think you can find 100% happiness in all of the elements that a school or an institution puts together. And I think, like you said, it's a co-creation of the parent, the child, and the institution. I want to move from here to a little bit
Yeah.
towards preparedness, given the situation we're all in these times. How do we prepare for the future, right? This parameter would not have made this checklist at all if not for this pandemic. COVID has sort of turned the entire education system on its head, and one needs to be sure that high schools are equipped to keep up. Oftentimes, everybody's, I'm in so many different forums where people are saying this is how you use Zoom and this is how you use Google Meet, and these are not. These are conversations of people who are desperately trying to sort of fit into a world, whereas these tools actually have been available for a long time. Preparedness comes in several forms, including tailoring the curricula, the methodology. It's not just technology, really, right? To still hold its merits despite the transition to online platforms. So the thing that I want to touch upon is often a parent's thought is, does my child also have to have a clear idea of how they will balance his or her well-being with academic excellence in these times. Schools are focusing more or less only on the academic completion right now because there is no physical presence at all possible. So physical development, motor skills development for young children, aesthetic development, communicative development, emotional development, social development, all have been sort of parked at some level. So the only thing that schools are even able to offer and families are able to evaluate a school on seems to be this thing of academic excellence. Another interesting element within that, before we get into the question of preparedness, is that schools need to be thinking about, is this the kind of skills and attitudes they want to reward and recognize? Like all these days when a child participated in a classroom, the things that a teacher might say is pay attention, put away things, sit straight. Suddenly, in a digital world, you can't enforce seating posture, you cannot enforce water breaks and toilet breaks, and the whole way we transact with children and facilitate learning seems to have completely changed, right? In this post-pandemic world, we need to celebrate innovation, critical thinking, entrepreneurial thought processes more than anything else. I'd like you to just touch upon how do families check for preparedness for the future in the institutions they're seeking for their children.
Yeah, before getting into the looking at the preparedness of schools, I would like to highlight 2 points. One, what this pandemic has showed us is that we are all connected and interconnected. So for
Sorry, I'm not able to
last
hear you.
last 200 years, we have been kind of fragmenting ourselves. Human beings, we have been fragmenting ourselves in terms of nationality, religion, race, caste, socioeconomic status, and so on. The pandemic has proved that we as human beings, we have a joint destiny, and we are all connected and interrelated. Now, it's high tech that schools start emphasizing, recognizing this aspect that we are, as human beings, we are all facing a joint destiny. And one more aspect related to this pandemic is the way our human beings' relationship with the environment. If there is one example of a zero-sum game, use of natural resources is the example for a zero-sum game. Okay, and it's more than
Velu, I think there's a problem. There's a problem with the video. The audience is, alerting me that your video is frozen. I'm not sure whether you're experiencing internet downtime at your end. But we were able to, although broken, we were able to make out that your audio did come through. Do you want to just refresh while I sort of summarize for the audience what you were trying to say? I think in this pandemic, it is true that we're sort of starting to reimagine education at beyond date, and I think it's very, very important for families also to look to that perspective that education cannot be what we offered for 200 years, because it's not been serving young learners already for many, many years, and post this pandemic, it's going to serve us even less. There's a lot of perceived elitism that comes about when schools affiliate themselves to one international board or another. By affiliating, all that a school actually has chosen to do is follow a structured syllabus of content that has been put together by a set of well-intended academic scholars. So don't evaluate your child's education so much by the curriculum that they are going to study, because great thinkers from this country itself have come about from matriculation education, from their different states, or from CBSE and ICSE. So curriculum has no role to play in the human beings going on to become a master. It's really the enablers and the culture of the organization, the teachers that work with the child, like Velu said, recognize that the child is trying to learn something, and can we enable the child in that learning journey? These are the more important things, right? I think Velu is still having some trouble connecting back. Let's give him a little bit time. In the meanwhile, I would encourage the audience to see if you'd like to have any questions that I can answer in this topic also before he comes back. But the point that I think he was making is in the period that post-COVID, at least, let's not look to just the curriculum to enable our children. Let's not look to infrastructure to enable our children. Let's not look just teacher training, and all of these things are useful. But what's more useful is that does the school have this strong culture that is evident in the way they transact with children, in the way they enable children, the way they listen to their children in their how they teach a particular subject, or even enable children in their own interest and passion. So the big takeaways that I can think of from what Velu said was, culture is not static or monolithic to begin with. It is more like a river, dynamic, continuously evolving and changing. There may be a dominant culture, but we need to be aware, that there are There may be more subcultures waiting to blossom in an organization. The other point that Dr. Velu made was it's important to pay attention to the language, the way we people in the school speak, look at the symbols, the way people dress, how they address their teachers, how much how formal or informally the teachers respond to children's queries or questions, how they dress, how the other employees in the organization dress. Are they allowed to express individual identities, or is there a force fitting of everybody looking the same thing, knowing the same thing, learning at the same time, learning from the same textbook? Is there so much rigidity that curiosity and creativity are being killed in the process? These will be indicators for you to look for when you visit a particular learning institution. The larger issues are that society focuses on academic success. He also touched upon it a little bit, and that's what a family may want. But if you're looking for how to prepare your child for the future, you have to look well beyond the academic achievements of an institution, because finally the academic achievements are also coming out from a particular child. Institution has played a part in enabling that child to succeed, but it's not academic success alone won't get learner very Dr. Velu is back.
Sorry, there was I don't know what happened. Anyway,
I was just trying to summarize as best as I could summarize all the things that you had said up to this point.
I'm not sure what the audience was hearing, where I got disconnected. So I was talking about this human beings as we have a joint destiny, and we are all related and interconnected. That's what this pandemic has proved to us, and there are many indications that these kind of things will is something that we should be ready to face. And school should take leadership in kind of inculcating this idea that we are all global citizens. Okay, that's the one most important thing that schools need to do to kind of help our the future generations face their life comfortably. Second is that there has always been a fear of technology in the education space, and even though very good technologies were available, we were not using it. And wherever there is adaptation, okay, this whole idea of face-to-face class is being translated into the online class mode also, and we need drastically different modes of interaction between the school teachers and the children. And one of the things which our online courses have proved already, and MOOC courses have proved, is that asynchronous mode of learning, where you don't have to have a live presence even online between the teacher and the student, has to be there for all kinds of topics and for all kinds of learnings. So differentiating the different learning objectives and matching it with the technology and platforms and mode of teaching or learning process is very important. That's how the schools can prepare themselves and the children to face the kind of challenges that we'll be facing henceforth. Okay, so this idea of integrating synchronous and asynchronous modes of online learning, and the idea of that we have a joint destiny, and this I believe is the most important things that school need to do to face the future.
Absolutely. In fact, taking your cue, perhaps through our earlier discussions over the years, we're at Beyond 8. One of the things our high school learners post this pandemic, our design itself is very asynchronous in nature, in the sense, watch the videos. Not only the teachers is teaching, but also others. There's so much material today in the world. I think creation is less important now, and curation itself is sufficient for most learning journeys. There's so much learning material available.
And one more thing is that we are not the idea of content. Teaching content is kind of out of place now. We have to prepare our students to take initiative and identify what they want to learn, and then learn by themselves, because all information is available, resources are available, and schools and teachers have to play the role of facilitators. So helping them to become learners on their own right, take initiative, and hold themselves accountable for the learning. And that's what that's the best thing that schools can do to children.
You're sort of summarizing the the beliefs in Beyond 8, which is give agency to the learner to identify
Yes.
their interests and passions, and teachers become facilitators and enablers of that journey. And when the child or the learner comes into the learning space excited to learn and engage with both the peers and the content, or the skills that they are going to acquire, the learning will naturally happen. It's not where you learn is less important, and what's more important is the learner actually engaged in the learning process. Thank you for that point as well, Velu. I think we've covered most of the points. Let me just quickly check if there's more questions in the audience. If there are any other questions, otherwise we can sort of bring this session to a close. The other important thing while we wait for the questions I would like to touch upon is that high school culture there should be a sense of inclusion. We've been very big proponents of inclusion, as we discussed in our previous episodes. For the audience, teenage period is a time when children are asserting their unique identities. They must be part of a culture that celebrates their uniqueness, as opposed to making them conform to a standard. Becoming one kind of person just for convenience of the institution or or a set of beliefs. Your child must also find value in doing the same for other children in the school, because of the sense of belonging he or she has experienced.
Yeah. So
Okay,
one related issue there is that we are talking about preparing the child for future, and hence a certain values which will help them in the kind of things that we see as emerging. Now, at the same time, we should not, I mean, people should not misunderstand. Parents should not misunderstand. We are talking about elitist kind of culture, or an ideology, something as an ideology, which is like, in utopia. We are not talking about that kind of a situation. We are, our school should kind of, create a certain sense of relatedness, connectedness, accepting and understanding diversity, differences. At the same time, also a reality check in terms of these differences exist. Okay, we cannot just throw out the socio-economic, cultural differences that exist. Okay, the casteism that exists, that other differences, religion, race differences that exist in the world. We cannot assume that they don't exist. Okay, what we are saying is don't buy into that. Okay, our children should see that these differences exist, and along with that, see that, how do I value the human being along with the differences, and where possible, can I look beyond the differences and work with the individual human being who is in front of me.
Absolutely. Actually, one audience sort of has thought about the same point and made this comment. School picking is like trying to pick one religion over another.
Yes.
That kind of attitude in parents may influence the authorities in schools to stick or conform to something that they think the parents are valuing. Schools need to be dynamic and nimble in order to enable young learners. Parents really play a crucial role in shaping the culture of the schools too. So the audience is agreeing with you. Let's, we're for positivity of your time, also to respect your time, I'm going to try and bring this session to a close.
Yes.
The other summaries that I took away from this is integrating asynchronous and synchronous modes of learning. Also, you touched upon. I sort of summarized while you were away, Velu, the other points that you raised, which were very important, and how synchronous and asynchronous modes of learning and matching these excuse me, with the learning objectives is very important. Also, the idea of teaching content is out of place. You talked about this. Prepare students to take initiative, understand how to learn, helping them to become learners of their own right, in their own right, and become accountable for their learning journeys. All very important points. With this, I'd like to bring this discussion to a close and thank Dr. Velu for sharing his views and insights. I have always valued your thoughts and inputs immensely, and I keep drawing from you strength from your ideas, your wisdom, and your ability to sort of take a big picture in all of these things. So I want to thank you for all that you do for me, for the institutions that I am a part of, Head Start Learning Center and Beyond 8. I also want to thank the audience for the one or two questions that came. If you feel that there are more things you'd like to ask us, please post your comments, and we'll try to find Dr. Velu's time whenever it is available. He's the dean of a upcoming institution that is doing really well under his stewardship, so he may not always have time. I want to thank him.
No, we will take time to respond, Naveen, and that's my commitment here. And it's been a pleasure working with you, and it's a joy seeing new initiatives coming from your side. And Beyond 8 is something which which is the need of the hour, as I was telling earlier. And it's a pleasure seeing you taking many of these ideas and making it. And for an academician, there's no bigger joy than seeing ideas getting translated into reality. And congratulations and all the best to you, Raji, and a whole team. And I'll be here to support in any way that I can.
Thank you so much, Dr. Velu. I'll now request my colleague and dear friend Vimal to bring this session to a close and tell you a little bit about what's next on Out of the Box and how you can enroll your children in Beyond 8 high school and all of the other things that we do at Beyond 8.
Thank you, Naveen, and thank you, Dr. Velu. It was a really good session for us. It was a little different for most parents, and I'm going to see this as a parent. Typically, when talking about schools, we don't talk about organizational culture, or we don't talk about aspects that typically seem corporate-ish, right? So if next time you go to a school and you're trying to find out if it's a good school for your child, ensure you look around, look at the various aspects that Dr. Jayavelu was talking about as well, and see if it's a good organizational fit. Lovely. So that was a session on organizational culture and preparedness for the future. Like I said, it's part of the Out of the Box Season 2, where we're talking about different aspects of the parameters that you should look at before you choose the right school for your child, right? The next session will be next Saturday at 11 a.m. We will be talking about finding the right curriculum for your child. Before you choose the right school, how do you find out, is this the right curriculum for my child, right? We'll have a special guest, so you got to tune in at 11 a.m. tomorrow, next Saturday. If you've missed any of our sessions, you can always go back to our YouTube channel. We have recordings of these sessions in different playlists, so subscribe to our YouTube page. The critical aspect is, maybe you don't have a teenager at home, maybe you're not looking for a school, maybe you know somebody who is. So don't forget to share these videos with them. Quickly about Beyond 8 and what we do. At Beyond 8, we have only one vision, that is to enable every child to follow his or her passions, right? It is not a mandate that you have to compromise your passions or leave off your passions if you have to pursue your academics. Our single purpose, our sole purpose at Beyond 8 is to enable every child to follow his or her passions without compromising on their academics. So we offer a high school program, and we also offer a post-high school program, something we spoke about last week. If you would like to know more about this program, do visit beyond8.in. We have opened out our admissions. In fact, our admissions are open throughout the year. We don't follow the typical or conventional system that you can be admitted only at one point of the time. So our admissions are open throughout the year. And if you are looking for an ideal place for your child to explore his or her passions, explore Beyond 8. With that, thank you so much for being here. We will see you in the same place next Saturday at 11 a.m. Thank you, and have a good weekend.